The grand dining hall of the Sterling estate glittered that morning, but beneath the chandeliers and crystal glasses lay a tension thick enough to choke on. The mahogany table, polished to perfection, stretched endlessly, and around it sat the family I had called my own for 30 years. My mother, Margaret Sterling, graceful as ever in her pearl gray suit, my father, Robert, stoic and cold, and my siblings, Ethan, Julia, and Michael, each dressed in smug silence, their eyes gleaming like vultures waiting for a meal to die. I should have known something was wrong from the way my mother's smile didn't reach her eyes when she told me, "Be here by 10, darling. It's important." I came because family mattered to me, or at least I thought it did. At the far end of the table sat Mr. Langford, the family's longtime attorney. He cleared his throat and shuffled papers, his expression professional but uneasy. "As per Mr. Sterling's wishes, we're here to finalize the estate division." Estate division? The word stung. My father wasn't even dead, merely retired. Yet here we were, carving his legacy like a Thanksgiving turkey. I looked around confused. Wait, what is this about? Why are we dividing anything now? Ethan leaned back, smirking. Because some of us have earned our place in the family business. Some of us deserve to know where we stand. Ethan, I warned, feeling heat rise in my chest. This isn't a competition. But my mother interrupted smoothly, her manicured hand lifting a glass of water. Actually, dear, it is. And it's time you understood that. Mr. Langford began reading. The Sterling lakefront mansion to Julia. The New York penthouse to Michael. The shares of Sterling Enterprises, divided equally among the 3 biological children. My ears rang. 3 biological children? I blinked, my gaze darting around. Wait, what about me? I whispered, half smiling in disbelief. You said biological children, is that a mistake? My mother set her glass down with a sharp clink. No mistake, Clara. Her tone was clipped, deliberate. You were never really one of us. For a second I thought I'd misheard. My heart stuttered. What are you talking about? She folded her hands elegantly, as if delivering an afternoon tea confession. You were adopted, dear. We took you in as an infant. Out of pity, really. But you're not blood. You never were. Laughter rippled softly from Ethan's side of the table. Julia's smirk cut deeper than any knife. Guess the secret's out. My world tilted. My stomach turned ice cold. You adopted me? After 30 years, you tell me now. My voice cracked. Margaret sighed, her expression hardening. You should be grateful, Clara. We gave you a life of privilege. But it's time you stop clinging to what isn't yours. The mansion, the company, the cars, they belong to our family. You were never meant to inherit them. Tears pricked my eyes, but pride forced me to hold them back. I was your family, I said softly, trembling. I loved you all. I worked in that company. I built those projects with my name on them. Ethan chuckled. You were just playing dress up, sis. And that word sis sounded like poison now. When the meeting ended, I stood on the marble steps outside, my vision blurred. The winter air cut through me like glass. Inside I heard laughter, real cruel laughter, echoing through the hall I'd once called home. That night I packed a single suitcase. My room, once filled with warmth, felt foreign. I paused at the door, looking back at the only world I'd known, whispering, "You'll regret this." As I stepped into the freezing night, the stars blurred into tears. I had nothing left. No name, no inheritance, no family. But I had one question burning like fire in my chest. Who am I, really? And I swore to find out. The following weeks felt like walking through smoke. Every breath heavy, every memory choking. My world, once painted in gold and certainty, had turned to ash overnight. The word adopted echoed endlessly in my head, hollow and sharp. I rented a small apartment downtown. Nothing like the Sterling mansion I had grown up in. The walls were thin, the floorboards creaked, and the heater coughed more than it worked. But it was mine. The first space in my life that wasn't given out of charity or pretense. Each morning I'd wake to silence. No servants, no breakfast trays, no good morning from anyone. Just me and the weight of betrayal. I tried to find comfort in the routine of searching. Old letters, family photos, anything that could tell me who I was before I became their secret. One evening I opened a box of childhood pictures. In every photo I stood a little apart from them, a little off-center, as if even the camera knew I didn't belong. I noticed it for the first time. The small differences I'd ignored all my life. My darker hair, my sharper eyes, my skin tone slightly warmer than my siblings. The truth had always been there. I'd just been too desperate for love to see it. After days of staring at walls and memories, I realized I needed help. My adoptive parents had erased my origin. They wouldn't tell me anything. If I was to uncover my past, I had to find someone who could. That's when I met Henry Lasker. His office was small, tucked between a pawn shop and a cafe that smelled of burnt espresso. A brass sign on the door read, "Lasker Investigations, Discreet Results, Honest Prices." He was in his late 50s, his gray hair slicked back, his coat slightly wrinkled. His eyes, though, were sharp, the kind that saw through lies before you even spoke. "You said you want to find your biological parents," he said, after I told him my story. I nodded, clutching the strap of my bag like a lifeline. "I don't have much to go on. I was adopted. No records, no clues." He studied me for a long moment, then leaned back. "People usually pay a lot for this kind of search. But you look like you've already paid enough." I blinked in confusion as he slid a paper toward me. $200. That'll cover the basics: birth certificate, adoption trail, anything public. If there's more to it, we'll talk. I hesitated. 200 was a lot for me now. But hope was priceless. "Do it," I whispered. Days turned into a blur. I went to work at a small architectural firm, nothing like Sterling Enterprises, and spent my nights waiting for Henry's call. Each ring of my phone made my heart leap and sink at once. 2 weeks later it came. "Clara." His voice was tight, trembling slightly. "Yes. You need to sit down." The tone in his voice made my stomach twist. "Why? Did you find them?" "Yes, I did," he said slowly. I could hear him breathing unevenly on the other end. "But it's not what you think." "Then what is it?" I demanded. "Please just tell me." There was a long pause. Then, with a voice barely above a whisper, he said the words that made my blood run cold. "Your biological father is Edward Sterling." My knees gave out. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering to the floor. Edward Sterling, the billionaire founder of Sterling Enterprises. The man whose name was engraved on every building, every plaque, every contract I'd ever worked on. The man my adoptive father had served his entire life. The man my adoptive mother used to meet in secret every few months. I stared at the silent phone, my heart pounding in disbelief. All this time, I hadn't been an outsider by blood. I had been their biggest secret, their biggest threat. And now I finally understood why they wanted me gone. The name Edward Sterling echoed in my head long after the call ended, bouncing against every thought until it broke into disbelief. It couldn't be true. Edward Sterling, the man whose portraits hung in our hallways, whose empire my father had devoted his life to building. The man I'd grown up calling Uncle Edward, whose gentle pat on my shoulder always felt oddly warm, almost familiar. But if Henry was right, that warmth had a reason. I spent the night pacing my apartment, clutching my phone as if it could offer an explanation. By morning I called Henry again, my voice trembling. "Tell me everything." He sighed heavily. "You were born in 1995. Birth certificate sealed by court order. But I traced the doctor's signature to a private hospital outside Chicago. I pulled staff logs, delivery records, and..." He hesitated. "Your birth mother is listed as Margaret Sterling." The air left my lungs. "My adoptive mother?" "Yes," he confirmed softly. "And the father listed was Edward Sterling. Robert's name never appears anywhere. Looks like they falsified the adoption papers months later." I sank into a chair, the room spinning around me. The pieces were clicking together, and each one cut deeper than the last. "So Margaret had an affair with Edward," Henry continued carefully. "And when she got pregnant, they covered it up. If the public found out, it would have destroyed both families. The Sterlings were business partners back then, not a single unit like now. Robert must have agreed to raise you as their adopted daughter to keep his marriage and the company's reputation intact." I pressed a hand to my mouth, my heart pounding. "And when I turned 30, they couldn't risk you finding out," he said grimly. "You're Edward's only biological child, Clara. Which means, legally, you're the rightful heir to the Sterling fortune and the majority shareholder of Sterling Enterprises. Your so-called siblings have nothing by comparison." The words felt heavy, unreal. Rightful heir. The phrase should have sounded like a victory, but it only filled me with sorrow. I had spent my whole life craving love, not wealth. But the people who were supposed to love me had used lies to erase me. My memories began to twist, reshaping themselves with this new truth. The way my mother's eyes softened whenever Edward visited. The subtle tension between Edward and Robert at family gatherings. The moment at my 16th birthday when Edward gave me a diamond pendant and said, "You remind me of someone I used to love dearly." I thought it was just kindness. Now I realized it was grief. For years they'd all played their roles, weaving a web of deceit so delicate it almost looked like affection. And I, the living proof of their betrayal, had been raised in the shadow of my own secret. Rage bubbled beneath my grief. They'd stolen not only my inheritance but my identity. They'd forced me to grow up believing I didn't belong, when in truth I was the blood that built everything they had. "Henry," I said quietly, my voice shaking but steady with purpose, "can you prove all this?" He hesitated. "I already have. DNA confirmations pending, but the paper trail is airtight. I'll send everything over. What do you plan to do?" I looked out the window at the city skyline glowing in the distance, Sterling Towers at its center, shining like a crown built on lies. "What I plan to do," I whispered, "is take back what's mine. But not with anger. They'll never see it coming. Because revenge wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was elegant, slow, graceful, and absolute." As I hung up, a strange calm washed over me. For the first time in weeks, I knew exactly who I was. Not Clara, the unwanted adoptee. Not the castaway of the Sterling family. I was Clara Sterling, daughter of Edward Sterling, rightful heir to the empire they built on deceit. And I was done playing small. 3 weeks after learning the truth, I stood before the mirror in a tailored navy suit, sharp, composed, and entirely unrecognizable from the broken woman who'd left the Sterling mansion with nothing. My tears had long dried. What replaced them was focus. Henry had done more than find my past. He'd armed me with evidence. Documents, birth certificates, legal statements, proof of who I truly was. And with that truth came a strategy. Edward Sterling's company, Sterling Enterprises, hosted an annual charity gala. A glittering affair where power disguised itself as philanthropy. Edward would be there. So would my adoptive mother, Margaret, and her perfect brood. I had received an invitation months ago, before they disowned me. I decided to keep it. It was time they saw me again, not as the discarded daughter, but as the storm they created. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and champagne. Every face I passed was a mask of polished smiles and empty ambition. Then across the room I saw him, Edward Sterling. Older now but unmistakably powerful. The man who unknowingly fathered me. I approached him with practiced calm, extending my hand. "Mr. Sterling," I said softly, "I'm Clara. Clara Bennett. I've admired your work for years." His eyes lifted to meet mine, and in that instant something flickered there. Recognition, perhaps. A quiet, unspoken familiarity. "Well," he said with a faint smile, "it's not often I meet someone who looks like they belong in this family." If only he knew how right he was. Over the next weeks I met with him again, first at his office, then over lunches, then private meetings. I didn't reveal the truth immediately. I wanted him to see me first, my ideas, my intelligence, my heart. He listened, intrigued by the young woman who reminded him of a love he'd lost decades ago. One afternoon, as we reviewed a proposal, he looked at me thoughtfully. "You know," he said slowly, "there's something about you, Clara, something that feels familiar. You remind me of someone I once knew." "Margaret," I said quietly. The pen fell from his hand. "How do you?" I slid the folder toward him. The documents Henry had gathered. The birth certificate. The DNA test. The truth. He read in silence, his face draining of color. Then slowly tears filled his eyes. Tears I'd never seen fall from any Sterling man. "She lied to me," he whispered. "All these years she took you from me." I nodded. "And then she threw me away." He stood, trembling, and for the first time he didn't see me as a stranger. "You're my daughter," he said hoarsely. "My blood." That moment, that single sentence, healed something I didn't even realize was bleeding. In the weeks that followed, Edward made everything official. The company's board was stunned when he announced that his estate and controlling shares would transfer to his only legitimate heir, me. He publicly acknowledged me as his daughter. The papers exploded with headlines. The hidden sterling heiress. And Margaret? She was there when the news broke. I'll never forget the way she looked at me, pale, furious, powerless. Her children's shares were revoked. The mansion she'd guarded like a fortress was no longer hers. It was mine now by law and by blood. At the next board dinner, I faced her across the same mahogany table where she'd once told me, "You were never really one of us." I smiled faintly and said, "You were right, Mother. I was never one of you. I was always above you." Her glass slipped from her hand, shattering against the floor. The perfect echo of the day she shattered me. Now when I walk through the halls of Sterling Mansion, my home, I feel no bitterness, only peace. My revenge wasn't in taking back what they stole. It was in showing them who I truly was. Not the orphan they pitied. Not the outcast they abandoned. But the heir they could never erase. I stand by the lakefront, the reflection of the mansion glowing behind me, the same one they once barred me from. The night air is soft, the water still. I whisper to the stars, to the man who gave me back my name, "You found me, Father. And I found myself." And with that I smile, not with triumph but with peace. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge is simply becoming everything they said you could never be.